Welcome back to Face the Nation. We go now to the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. Good morning to you, Governor.
Good morning.
You've got a big day, World Cup finals in nearby New Jersey. I know you'll be attending those. So will the President of the United States, the President of Mexico, the Canadian Prime Minister. Given the threat environment, are you confident in the security measures?
Absolutely. We've worked so closely with our federal, state, and local partners in law enforcement. We have been preparing for this for literally over a year, over 1,000 exercises, table-topping all the scenarios. So we're with the best, and particularly with NYPD, the world's greatest police force. I feel very confident in our security. And we're so happy to welcome the eyes of the world. The entire planet is going to be watching what is happening right here in the New York City area. So it's exciting. It's a very exciting time for us.
Truly billions watching, and we will be too. Governor, I want to ask you about a decision that you made this past week that made very big headlines. You signed an executive order to ban large-scale data centers for a year. These are those big buildings that help to power artificial intelligence technology centers. It was just a few months ago you said data centers were a local decision for municipalities. What changed for you?
I would say what changed was talking to the localities and realizing they don't have the negotiating ability to, or have the clout to be able to demand that their communities benefit from this in a more dramatic way. They also don't have the ability to insist that these companies bring their own power or pay more for the grid. They don't have an ability to say no to tax breaks. And so I decided that I could do much more, especially in this, actually flooding the zone is what's happening now. We have over 30 applicants. So in a very short time, I changed my position saying, you know what, the state has to lead here, but it's not about being the first. It's about being the first to get it right. And we will get it right over the course of this year and help those localities negotiate the right way, make sure we're keeping track of how much water is being consumed, doing a study of that during this year, but also insisting that these companies, and they're welcome, with the conditions and the rules that we set forth, that they also contribute to the larger grid, because this is a huge tax on our grid. And I want to make sure that the power is there, our limited power is there for the large companies that are creating jobs, like the Micron that we recruited here with 50,000 jobs. So we'll get the right balance, but I'll tell you this, people want protection. New Yorkers want protection. There's a lot of anxiety. Companies want certainty. We'll give them both.
Well, governors from red states like Missouri, Montana, Wyoming, they signed this White House Ratepayer Protection Pledge, which I guess has AI data centers sign on to promising not to increase consumer prices. Like companies, OpenAI and Amazon say they'll help cover the cost of infrastructure upgrades. Have you talked to these companies, about doing the same in New York? Why isn't a White House pledge like that sufficient?
Asking these companies to keep their word on how much they're going to consume. I'm more realistic than that, perhaps. I'm willing to say, I will get it right in New York. We'll work with the companies, but also, and we're open to AI, absolutely. This is a place for innovation is welcome and celebrated. But my view is, if you're going to succeed in New York because of our talent and our resources and our people, I want to make sure that New Yorkers succeed as well. So it's not a one-way street. I don't want the companies coming in and telling us how to do things in our state, but they can be welcome when I lay out the rules of the world of the road, which they will embrace. I mean, once they know how to play the game, how to do things in New York, they'll want to come, but I need some breathing room. So my agencies, I've got 7 agencies dedicated to different elements of this, the economic development benefits for communities, how we manage how much they're going to be consuming in water, how we make sure that, I mean, just to say, make sure the ratepayers don't pay more, how do you enforce that? I'm more realistic. I want to get things done and make it really be effective.
It sounds like you want evidence to help get you to yes. But in the meantime, you are hearing concerns from unions, for example, that this is going to turn away jobs and that it'll send a signal that New York is not a place for companies to invest long term. How do you address that?
That's not the right conclusion from what I've done. We've been very clear. And as someone who's created more union jobs in this state than anybody in history, the largest private sector development in American history is going on right now with this Micron. That is 20 years of union jobs building this. We also have tens of thousands of union jobs over years, like building the Gateway Tunnel, which was stymied, stuck, not happening until I unstuck it. So I've got more jobs for union members. They don't have to worry about my commitment to their jobs, but wouldn't they be rather building jobs that there's jobs that remain after the construction season is over, that the project is built, that we actually have people, their neighbors, communities, people actually working in those buildings with long-term, good-paying jobs and not just focused on construction, which is very important. So I'm asking everybody to say, take a breath. This is not the end of the world. We'll get through this. And New York always leads in a smart way. And that's what I'm really proud of what we're doing here.
I want to ask you about election security. We're about 100 days out from Election Day. States administer the elections in this country, not the federal government. Are you getting the kind of election security resources your state has gotten in the last few years? Do you have what you need?
No, the federal government has basically been dismantling all the protections that we've come to rely on to protect this core essence of our democracy, the knowledge that when you cast that vote, that citizens' right, that obligation to determine who our leaders are, that it is uncompromised. It is not being challenged by the federal government just because they're so worried about the upcoming results. That is exactly what is happening. I want everyone to focus on that. Yes, we passed the John Rights Voting Act. We have the toughest protections in the country. And just recently, I signed a law, many protections against what ICE is doing, to say ICE agents cannot show up at polling places. Can you see this scenario? Black and brown communities across our country and in New York, where they're all of a sudden on election day to create that fear factor and intimidation factor that they're so good at. I do not want to see that compromise the validity of our election. So what Donald Trump is doing right now is throwing out the biggest red herring you'd ever see and questioning the actual results that are happening. So we're working hard on this in New York. I'll make sure that we are protected, but I can't count on the federal government for anything in this space because they're compromised.
Under federal law, armed agents are not supposed to be at election centers. The Attorney General nominee, Todd Blanche, said he'd follow the law, but it sounds like you are still concerned that that might happen. Have you?
They don't follow the law very much at all, Margaret. They don't follow the law much at all. So again, trust but verify. I'm going to verify and ensure that New York State is doing it right. I don't trust that they're going to say this because what happens is they say the day after, like, oh, well, we didn't mean to do it, and oh, sorry about that. You know, these are people who go around killing individuals in our streets. So they have no credibility with me when they say anything.
We will speak to the White House about that topic shortly. Thank you very much, Governor. We'll be right back. We turn now to the economy. On Thursday, we spoke with Bank of America's CEO Brian Moynihan and asked him for an update.
Well, affordability is a challenge. It talked about challenge that we see in our customer base. But as you look at what's really going on, we see a couple things. One is the consumers, our 70 million consumers who spend about $400 billion plus a month, are spending about 5 or 6% more money this month of June of 26 versus 25, and likewise in the first part of July here. So they're spending money, and while the consumers reflect on higher gas prices or higher food prices and inflation and things like that, and are worried about it, what you see is especially the middle third of households and the top third of households by income, their spending is growing faster. What's been interesting, frankly, in the more recent past, in the last couple of months, is we're seeing the wage growth of all income cohorts kind of coalesce together around 3 to 4%, which is good.
So they're holding in there, even though we're seeing gas prices have raised the cost for drivers by 31% since this war with Iran began. I know fuel inventories remain low. How are you thinking about how this geopolitical uncertainty factors in to planning?
So the price of oil and gas affects not only the gas at the pump, which is what you're first reflecting on, and that is up. It actually started coming down, and as the oil prices rise, it might rise back up. But it basically, when we were running around $100 barrel equivalent oil, you were running about a $4 and change gas price. It actually had come down from the month of May to June because that's when the oil started flowing more. But I think if you talk to businesses, it's different. What consumers see is in a concerning nature that is out there. But when businesses see it, they worry about the cost of goods that's coming through the pipeline. So the goods are being manufactured now, have imported the oil and gas to go into the plastics production or the material production or whatever it was. during the time when gas prices are high, and that's why our team has inflation staying higher all the way into 27, 28, and why the Federal Reserve will probably, our belief was will raise rates, whereas 6 months ago they thought the Fed would be cutting rates. They're actually believing they'll raise rates to fight off this inflation, and it will take them a while to get through it.
So raise rates, you think the Fed will act as soon as next week to do that? Or excuse me, end of the month to do that?
I don't think no. More towards the end of the year. Our team has them raising rates, and I think based on the recent data that came out, they had 3 rate rises. Whether they hold that with some of the inflation numbers, but the reality is it's sort of the tail end of this year into next year, and it really will depend a lot on the path of other price cohorts other than just oil and gas at the pump, and that's the question of what's going on in housing and food and other places where you're seeing some continued progress being made. It's drifting down, and it's drifting down slower than people would like it, but the reality is this type of inflation takes a long time to squeeze out of the system. When you go back to the post-pandemic infusion of cash and infusion of activity, that just takes a while to squeeze out.
When we looked at Bank of America's earnings recently, you had record sales and trading revenue in the quarter past. A lot of that, some of it churn from energy price swings, but some of it seems from the tech boom of these massive AI companies and the public listings. How do you think about that, what looks like a tech boom?
It's absolutely a strong market for technology and other IPOs. There's biotech, there's biology, there's drugs going out, getting IPO'd and things like that. There's M&A activity. And so when you're talking about the investment banking activity of Bank of America was up 70% year over year or something like that, and our peers were up like amounts, and that has a lot to do at 50% actually. That has a lot to do with the amount of activity our corporate clients are doing, in part also comparing to last year, which was a Liberation Day quarter. The good news is at our company, the nominal dollars we earned in the first quarter and the second quarter went up in investment banking, and that's reflecting the environment around us.
Yeah, Jamie Dimon said it's getting close to as good as it gets. We just don't know how long it's going to last. I guess you're in that same camp. You don't know how long this is going to last.
That's always that's the pipeline. We measure what we call pipeline. So what's the forward activity that haven't yet booked? In other words, the deals in process, and that activity is as strong as it's ever been.
Well, it's fascinating because Wall Street is benefiting from this IPO boom around AI. But it is the state of New York, where you are sitting right now, that has now become the first state to bar the construction of large-scale data centers. There's just so much political heat around this idea of not in my backyard. And the president argues this is all a driving force for jobs and a good thing. Do you see more states following suit?
This is a classic struggle of land use, and everybody's working it through, and everybody will work it through differently. Whether it's the stories about New York putting a pause on in terms of further development, while they try to figure out the dynamics of electricity pricing, water pricing, and things like that. There's other states that are saying, build it. Louisiana has a major facility going in. So I think we see it handled differently, but it really comes down to America being America. My community, my town hall, my town meeting, my mayor, my council deciding what they want to do, or my governor. And I think that's where the population is trying to figure it out. And so there's a pretty good tug of war going on, but I think the facts ought to get on the table, the decisions ought to follow what people want for their community, and then frankly the data center builders will go to the communities that want them.
So I know you've got a FIFA sign next to you, and the FIFA World Cup finals are this weekend. The world's going to be watching. You're a sponsor. Given how high ticket prices are to these matches, have you been surprised at the turnout at the tournaments and the spending?
Absolutely not. Our team did a research piece, Margaret, that said that the total amount that is economically generated on FIFA is about $40 billion, $20 billion would be in the U.S. And then even we look in the host cities like Kansas City, we can see the growth rate in spending faster than other cities. So it's having this on-the-ground economic impact. And that spending is going into what we call bricks and mortar. It's going to bars and restaurants and things like that, not necessarily only the people in the stadium. And so it's an unbelievable phenomenon I think the United States hadn't seen for a while, seeing again. And to put it in context, they're estimated 2 billion people will watch that the finals on Sunday, which is just an amazing amount. And that's what the brand strategy for us was. We had a great quarter internationally. We have a great international business. It's a very important part of what we do.
You can watch our full interview on our YouTube channel or on facethenation.com. We'll be right back. And we're back with President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan. Welcome back to Face the Nation.
Thanks for having me.
Mr. Homan, we saw that 2 immigrants were shot in the span of a week. There was that one in Maine that was fatal just days after, another one in Houston. We also saw that man fleeing agents in Florida who then was struck and killed by a tractor trailer. I know you've been trying to keep the department out of the headlines ever since that streak in Minnesota that was deadly. How do you respond to those who say what's happening now looks like very little has changed?
Well, you know, first of all, we'll wait and see what the investigations, how they play out, right? Because, you know, I don't want to get ahead of investigations on who's at fault, what exactly happened, because we all know when these investigations happen, there's going to be cell phone video, there may be city cameras, and you know, of course, then you got witness statements and affidavits from the officer and witnesses. So we got to let the investigations play out. So I don't want to really comment on investigations themselves, but you know, I think you know, Mark Wayne Mullen, you know, took some action and in concern of safety of the agents and how we do operations, and that's why he did that. You know, that pause on enforcement on vehicle stops. But you know, my concern is I've done this since 1984. My concern is I think a lot of the rhetoric that you see every day, especially in sanctuary cities and at these protests that resist. Members of Congress saying ICE isn't a real law enforcement agency. I think that I actually think that emboldens some people to say, I'm not going to comply with ICE. And I think no matter what people think of ICE, no matter what you think of the immigration law, you should always comply with law enforcement.
Yes, but in the shootings in both Houston and Maine, the people who were killed were not the intended targets. Have you caught the people you were actually looking for?
One of them, I believe we did, but you know, that happens in law enforcement all the time. I mean, we're working, you know, we get leads on individuals, and you say, okay, well, this subject lives at this house, he drives this car. And when that subject leaves that house, you know, 6 o'clock in the morning, and someone gets in that car from that house, you know, they assume, okay, this is our guy, and they'll do a vehicle stop. And depending on when they make that stop and that person complies, either they're going to be arrested or released. That's the way it's supposed to be. So, you know, law enforcement deals with misidentity every day across the country, not just ICE. Every law enforcement agency. I was a cop. I know that happens.
Yeah, but these were fatal shootings, of course, in Houston and in Maine. And in Houston, it was an unmarked car. So when you're saying don't resist, these individuals who were chasing the man who died, they didn't have markings on that vehicle that would allow for him to know that they were ICE. It just looked like a car coming after them in the videos.
No, they have emergency lights. Officers have insignia, so when they get out of that car and approach the car, you can clearly see the law enforcement officers.
Well, in the video that has been public, it's not a marked car.
These people, I'm not saying it's a marked car, but they have emergency lights and sirens, so when they pull somewhere, they want to activate the emergency lights. A lot of police departments, I'm in New York City right now, a lot of NYPD officers are driving unmarked vehicles, and that helps them find people that don't want to be found, right? So, you know, but bottom line is, we'll see when the investigation plays out, but they would be alive today if they simply complied with a vehicle stop by federal law enforcement. Just comply. You can, if you don't think you've been treated right and they had no reason to stop you, then there's avenues to take them to court, to sue.
Well,
to
the family of the man in Houston said that he thought he was being robbed because it was an unmarked vehicle. Not that it was law enforcement at all.
They had emergency lights. They activate emergency lights, blue and light. You know, in my vehicle I drive where I'm with my security detail.
You've seen that on video? Because we haven't.
Seen what on video, ma'am?
That there were lights? Because in the videos that we've seen, there aren't. And because there weren't body cameras, it is hard to substantiate some of what you were saying. Okay,
well, I have not seen the videos, but I'm saying our vehicles are equipped with emergency lights. Now, if they didn't activate the lights, again, I haven't seen that video. If they didn't activate the lights, then there's an issue there, right? But I'm saying they're equipped with lights. So let me just caveat that. They should have been equipped with lights and sirens, but I do not know specifically if they activated those lights. As far as the cameras, Margaret, You know, everybody in ICE would have a camera now if the government wasn't shut down by Democratic members of Congress. There was money in that bill that they held up.
Yeah.
I think it was $120 million to equip all ICE officers with cameras, but because the government shut down, we're behind on that.
But they got $20 million in April.
Purchased. It wasn't enough. The $20 million may have bought some cameras, but it doesn't buy the storage. It doesn't buy the resources we need for the thousands of FOIA requests we're going to get. There has to be storage capability to hold these videos for a long time. So it didn't fund everything, but now we have the funding after reconciliation. The cameras have been purchased. Right now they're training the trainer and deploying the cameras nationwide.
Do you think it was a mistake for the Trump administration to have proposed the body cam expansion at the beginning of the term? Because I know you have advocated for body cameras, and now you're playing catch up, right?
I think body cameras are the way to go. I think body cameras lets the American people know what that officer sees when he takes that action.
When will everyone get one?
You can have a cell phone camera from a witness on the side. You can have, city cameras or whatever. But I want the American people to see what that officer sees when he makes the decision, takes an action.
Yeah.
I think the American people need to see what that officer sees and hears. I think it's important. Yeah. And if you look at the data, body cameras actually exonerate agents more than they, provide evidence of wrongdoing.
Well, yeah, and it would certainly help with reporting and public knowledge. Let me ask you about something else. The DHS secretary has said they went through public records and identified 250,000 non-citizens in 4 states, California, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Nevada. I know those states don't share their voter rolls, so it looks like they're just pulling this from public information. For those states, are you planning operations before November? And you do acknowledge that it would be illegal to have federal agents at election locations.
That's a question of DHS. I'm not in the loop on that. I'm not familiar with the information that DHS just released.
Okay.
I'm not in the loop on that. I'm at the White House Board of Czar, so that'd be a question for Mark Wayne Mullen. I'm not in the loop on that.
Okay. All right. Mr. Homan, thank you for your time this morning. We'll leave it there.
Good seeing you, Margaret.
We'll be back in a moment. That's it for us today. Thank you all for watching. Until next week, for Face the Nation, I'm Margaret Brennan.